Hey there, and welcome. We're all using the cloud constantly, right? Every single day. But what is it, actually? Well, let's dive in and finally pull back the curtain on one of the most important technologies of our time.
Okay, think about this. You snap a great photo, you hit upload and poof, it's in the cloud. It feels like magic, doesn't it? But it's not. Your photos, your emails, all your stuff, it's all going to a very real physical place. You know, to really get why the cloud is such a big deal, you have to look at how things used to be. Picture every company, every company, needing a room just like this one, filled with these blinking, whirring servers. They were crazy expensive to buy. They sucked up a ton of power, and keeping them cool was a nightmare. Just a massive, costly headache.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to cover what the cloud actually is, how the engine behind it works, the different service options, who really owns the infrastructure, and finally, we'll look at some of those hidden risks. Okay, first up, let's cut through all the marketing hype and figure out what the cloud really means.
Right, so here's the big takeaway. The cloud isn't some fluffy thing up in the sky. It's really just a network of massive warehouses full of computers. We call them data centers. And cloud computing is basically just renting access to those computers over the internet. Instead of buying your own, you rent someone else's, and you only pay for what you actually use. Simple as that.
And this is why it's a total game changer. Let's say your website goes viral and suddenly gets 1 million hits. No problem. You just scale up your resources instantly. Then when things quiet down, you scale right back down. You don't have to buy all that expensive hardware up front, you get amazing reliability, and of course, your team can access everything from anywhere in the world. But how does that even work? How can one giant computer handle thousands of different customers at the same time? Well, the magic behind it all, the real secret sauce, is something called virtualization.
So, put simply, virtualization is just software that takes one super powerful physical computer and, well, it slices it up. It creates a bunch of smaller, totally separate virtual computers inside of it. Each one thinks it's its own machine, but really, they're all just sharing the power of that one big server. Let's walk through this. It makes it super clear. So a company needs 4 servers for, let's say, its website, a database, and payroll. In the old days, that meant buying 4 separate physical machines. But with virtualization, you buy just one really powerful server. Then, this special software called a hypervisor steps in and digitally splits that one machine into 4 independent virtual ones. Each task gets its own little server, but you're using the hardware so much more efficiently. It's a huge deal.
And, there are a couple of flavors of this hypervisor software. The big cloud companies, think Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they use what's called a Type 1 or bare metal hypervisor. It runs right on the hardware, so it's super fast and efficient. But if you're, say, a developer just running a test on your laptop, you'd probably use a Type 2, which is a bit simpler and just runs like a normal app on top of your Windows or Mac OS.
All right, so now we know how it all works. But what are you actually getting when you sign up for a cloud service? Well, you can think of it like a menu, and there are really 3 main dishes to choose from.
Okay, so those 3 options are Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS, Platform as a Service, PaaS, and Software as a Service, SaaS. With IaaS, you're renting the raw ingredients, the virtual computers, the storage, the networking, you build everything else. With PaaS, the provider handles the infrastructure and the operating system, so you can just focus on your application. And then there's SaaS. With SaaS, you manage nothing. You just use the finished product. Think about Gmail or Office 365. We are all using SaaS every single day. So, on top of what service you're buying, there's the question of where it is. Who actually owns the servers, and who else is using them? This is where we get public, private, and hybrid clouds. A public cloud is kind of like a huge apartment building. It's owned by somebody else, like Amazon or Google, and you're just renting a unit, sharing the building with tons of other people. A private cloud is the opposite. It's like owning your own private house. It's all yours, dedicated just to you, which is great for security and control. And a hybrid cloud? Well, that's the best of both worlds. You have your private house, but it's connected to the public grid when you need a little extra power. Okay, this all sounds pretty amazing, right? But it's not perfect. There are definitely some trade-offs to think about. So, what's the catch? Well, for starters, there's something called vendor lock-in. Once you're with one provider, it can be really hard and expensive to switch to another. You also have to accept that you don't control the physical machines your stuff is running on. You're putting a lot of trust in the provider's security. And this is a big one.
You have to remember that your data is physically sitting in a server in some country, which means it's subject to the laws of that country. That's a huge deal for privacy.
So yeah, the risks are real, but the tech doesn't stand still. The drive for even more efficiency has led to the next big leap forward, and that's something called containers.
So think of it this way. If a virtual machine is like a full house, a container is more like a tiny, efficient studio apartment. It's much lighter. A tool called Docker is what lets you package up your app and everything it needs into one of these little containers. And then you have Kubernetes, which is like the orchestra conductor for a massive city of these containers, telling thousands of them what to do. This stuff is basically running the modern internet.
So here we are. We've gone from every company having its own little server room to a world where pretty much our entire digital lives, our photos, our work, how we talk to each other, it all runs on computers owned by just a handful of giant companies. The technology is amazing, there's no doubt about it, but it leaves us with a really big question to chew on. As our whole world becomes more and more centralized in the cloud, who exactly do we trust to run it?